All right, everybody, how are we doing this evening here? July 6, 2022. I'm your host, Andy Mercado from Mercado Media, independent journalist, U.S. Army veteran. Been covering this war since day one. How is everybody doing? Let me know in the chat how you're doing this evening. Shout out to all of our members, shout out to all of our supporters, shout out to all of the viewers that have been tuned in on a nightly basis to the coverage here. If you guys want to join the channel on YouTube, consider becoming one. The link is in the live chat. And if you want to become a subscriber on the Facebook page, the link is in the description of the video. Thank you to everybody that sent stars during this live stream. Thank you to everybody that sent super chats during this live stream. It really helps me continue going with this coverage and continue providing this news coverage at the level that I am and at the rate that I am. Thank you guys so much for doing so. So if you want to follow along in the description of our video before I go into the Ukraine war update, I include a mini world news update in the description of our videos, just touching some of the subjects that are going on outside of Ukraine that I might miss on a nightly basis, but we do include them in the description so you can follow along here. Mini world news update for July 6, 2022. Another thing too, if you guys could just hit that like button for me on Facebook, spam those reactions on Facebook, the like button on YouTube, smash that like button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and the notifications are turned on for both Facebook and YouTube so you never miss a stream. Mini world news update for July 6th. The White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says President Biden has read WNBA star Brittney Griner's letter to him from a Russian prison. This is a priority, Jean-Pierre tells CBS News, adding that the U.S. will use, quote, everything at our disposal to help bring her home. More than 30 resignations were submitted to the government since Tuesday, including letters from cabinet members Rishi, Sunak, and Sajid Javid from parliamentary private secretaries. Johnson has ruled out snap election and said he will, quote, keep going. On Wednesday evening, senior Conservative MPs are set to define the timetable to elect the 1922 committee's new executive, which could force a change of rules to enable a new vote of confidence in Boris Johnson's leadership, the Evening Standard. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina will challenge a grand jury subpoena seeking his testimony as part of an investigation into possible criminal interference in Georgia's 2020 election by former President Donald Trump and his allies, the lawmaker's attorney said on Wednesday in Fulton County, Georgia. In Fulton County, Georgia, investigators have told them that Graham, an ally of Trump's, is, quote, neither a subject nor target of the investigation, simply a witness, his attorneys had said. In Uvalde, Texas, police officer had the Robb Elementary School shooter in his rifle sights before he entered the school, but asked a supervisor for permission to shoot before firing, according to a Texas State University alert report. Alert says under Texas state law that the officers was allowed to hit the attacker because he could have reasonably believed that deadly force was immediately necessary to prevent the commission of murder. So the police officer had the shooter in Uvalde at the Robb Elementary School. He had him in his sights and did not shoot. He radioed to hire asking for permission to shoot and never shot. The man accused of killing 7 people and wounding dozens of others in a mass shooting at an Independence Day parade in Highland Park confessed to carrying out the massacre, prosecutors said Wednesday. The suspect, Robert Cremo III of Highwood, Illinois, did not enter a plea during his initial court appearance at Lake County Courthouse on Wednesday, a day after he was formally charged with 7 counts of first-degree murder. If convicted, he would receive a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Cremo appeared in court via video. He was assigned a public defender and ordered held without bond. His next court appearance is set for July 28th. So we'll have an update towards the end of July for the Highland Park mass shooter on July 4th. We'll have an update at the end of July. Confusion ensued after private defense lawyer Tom Durkin, who had indicated the night before that he would represent Mr. Cremo, attempted to join the Zoom meeting but was delayed by several minutes. When he finally entered, Mr. Durkin explained that he had to step aside from the case due to an unspecified conflict of interest. It was then agreed that Mr. Tixay would represent Mr. Cremo going forward. That's from the Independent from the United Kingdom. Prosecutors read aloud the names of victims as they recited the bare facts of the case. Dillon said Crimo was spotted running from the scene with a black bag over his shoulder. An object wrapped in cloth fell out of the bag and onto the pavement. The individual left that object and kept running, Dillon said. Dillon said that the object was a Smith & Wesson M&P 15 semi-automatic rifle. Crimo also drove to Madison, Wisconsin, and contemplated a shooting there before his capture in Illinois, police had said. So it could have been a shooting in Madison, Wisconsin, had he not been captured. So that is the latest updates going on in the world about the mass shooting from July 4th, and then Uvalde, Texas. More and more continues to come out of Uvalde of the lack of action from the police officers there, and I really feel, the governor of Texas, the way that he just disregarded all of the concerns immediately from the community and just was like, our law enforcement just did a great job, and just immediately parroted the talking points that he does to win elections in Texas instead of investigating it, and then didn't even take accountability. It's just garbage down there. And the fact that now we're learning that the responding officer had the shooter in his sights and didn't shoot, it is ridiculous. All right, more continues to come out. Now we'll provide more from the mass shooter from July 4th on July 28th. All right, so that is the latest going on in the world. You can find that in the description of our videos here on Mercado Media on Mercado Media on YouTube and Facebook. Now let's get into Ukraine. And before we get into that, I'm just going to break down what this live stream is. I'm going to do a map update. I'm going to provide a update on the assessed Russian advance, claimed Russian control of territory, claimed Ukrainian counteroffensives on a map, partisan warfare. We're going to talk about assessed Russian control. I'm going to draw arrows showing the way that they're advancing, where the Ukrainians are retreating, where the Ukrainian counteroffensives are moving. And I'm going to show map features and do that. And then after we're done with that usually takes about an hour. And then after that, we're going to go into the latest video clips and combat footage that have come out within Ukraine, or just the Ukraine war in the last 24 hours. And I'll go into the latest, any news reports or news pieces that have come out in the last 24 hours. We will dive into those. And in between these live streams, you can find a map update video just by itself if you're looking for just a summary of what's going on in Ukraine, just the map. Okay, and we provide that. So with that being said, welcome everybody. Let me get to this screen. I don't have it programmed properly yet. There we go. Welcome everybody to another day of Ukraine war coverage here on July 6, 2022, day 133 of the war in Ukraine here on Wednesday. And here we go right away on day 133. There were no claimed or assessed Russian territorial gains in Ukraine on July 6 for the first time in 133 days of war. Supporting the study of independent war's assessment that Russian forces have largely initiated an operational pause. Quick. One more time here. Let me read that one more time. There were no claimed or assessed Russian territorial gains in Ukraine on July 6th for the first time in 133 days of war, supporting the study of war's assessment that Russian forces have largely initiated an operational pause. The Russian Defense Ministry claimed territorial gains every day from the start of the war, but has not claimed any new territory or ground force movements since completing the encirclement of Lysychansk on July 3rd. However, Russian forces still conducted limited and unsuccessful ground assaults across all axes on July 6th. Such attempts are consistent with the Russian operational pause, which does not imply or require the complete cessation of active hostilities. It means, in this case, that Russian forces will likely confine themselves to relatively small-scale offensive actions as they attempt to set conditions for more significant offensive operations and rebuild the combat power needed to attempt those more ambitious undertakings. So, many reports suggesting that the Russian military is on an operational pause after the seizure of Lysychansk as they regroup and bring new conscripts to the front lines, including fresh equipment. The Kremlin continued to set conditions for crypto mobilization of the Russian economy in anticipation of protracted operations within Ukraine. The Russian State Duma adopted the third and final reading of law introduced by the cabinet ministers on June 30th that will allow the Russian governments to oversee and regulate labor relations in Russian enterprises, which are both state and privately owned. This law, as Study War has previously reported, will allow government officials to recall workers from personal vacations, reschedule time off without employee consent, and require employees to work weekends, holidays, and nights. These measures will allow the Kremlin to take much more direct control of most aspects of the Russian economy, including suspending rights and protections some workers would normally have. The law must still be sent to the Federation Council before it reaches Russian President Vladimir Putin and is officially published, but the Kremlin is likely seeking to use the law to leverage domestic labor to maximize economic output and prepare for protracted operations in Ukraine. Russia's largest lead production plant reportedly stopped production on July 6th due to the almost total halt of Russian metallurgical exports, and Kremlin will likely continue to take measures to codify economic mobilization to offset or mitigate the effects of the sanctions and war on essential industries. Crypto mobilization of the economy within Russia, because the ruble is going to be going down, down, down. Again, it was a bubble for the ruble. Those that were gloating on how much the ruble was worth and didn't where it was just a bubble. Key takeaways of the day. The Russian Ministry of Defense has not claimed any territorial gain since July 3rd, supporting the assessment that Russian forces are conducting an operational pause while still engaging in limited attacks to set conditions for more significant offensive operations. The Kremlin continues to prepare for a protracted war by setting conditions for crypto mobilization of the economy and largely initiating an operational pause within Ukraine. Russian forces conducted offensive operations northwest and east of Sloviansk. Russian forces continued efforts to push westward towards Seversk from the Luhansk-Donetsk Oblast border. Russian forces conducted attempts to advance toward Bakhmut from the south. Russian forces conducted limited ground attacks north of Kharkiv city. Russian forces conducted unsuccessful ground assaults in northwestern Kherson Oblast. Ukrainian forces may be setting conditions for a counteroffensive toward Kherson city, and Russian forces may be forming a new military unit in Melino, Nizhny Novgorod Oblast. Now let's get into the map here, and let's get into the key features before we go into each individual happening going on. And let me adjust this really quick. I'm going to adjust, we can edit this out. I'm going to adjust my camera. I fixed it because it was lagging really bad. It was lagging so bad. That's not even the best. That's better. Go with. Yeah, that's good. That's way better. You guys can actually see me. I'm not leaking off of the page there. All right, we'll start from here. All right, start from here for the edit. So this is the map of Ukraine, and I'm going to go into each of the territorial gains and losses within Ukraine and also show you guys some of the map features that is going on here. So to the south, you have the Crimean Peninsula, and I'm just going to circle that for you. Everything that I'm trying to call attention to, I will use lime green. This is the Crimean Peninsula, all right? That has been annexed and occupied by Russian forces since 2014. Similar to that, you have the Donbass that's not annexed, but it's been occupied by Russian forces and led by separatist leaders since 2014. So this is the Donbass. You have Crimea and Donbass, which have been led by Russian separatists or Russian forces since 2014. Everywhere else on the map has been post-invasion. So post-24 February, after the Russians had launched their invasion, you'll see the red on the southern axes, red in the east in the Donbass, and in the northeast in the Kharkiv Oblast. The Russians used to be in the north around Kyiv, and even further north to Chernihiv and the Sumy Oblast up to Chernobyl near Belarus, but the Ukrainians have pushed them away from those regions since the invasion has begun. So we're going to go into each individual territory. Red on the map is assessed Russian advance. Yellow on the map is claimed Russian control. So that is just territory that Russian sources have claimed that they've taken, but it hasn't been certified by both the West and Russian forces and Ukraine. So by all three, I should say. Blue on the map is claimed Ukrainian counteroffensive. So this is territory that Russia once held, and now Ukraine has pushed them back and has retaken this territory. So you'll see that in the southern axes, and you'll see that in northeast in the Kharkiv Oblast. And we'll talk about each individual area. And here are the three main fronts. Here are the three main fronts of the war. The southern axes. Okay. Southern axes in Ukraine. Then you got the Donbass in the east. Okay. Then you have the Kharkiv Oblast and Belgorod, I should say. Right, these are the three main areas that stuff is going on still within Ukraine, just to keep it simple. The ground battles, Ukraine versus Russia on the ground, right? There's still artillery strikes that are taking place throughout the country, in Kyiv and to the west of the country, but most of the ground fighting and everyday changes within the war happens in these three regions that I've circled. Right, on a daily basis. Today, it seems there haven't been any changes. We'll get into that. First, we're going to start in the east in Donbass. So let's go here. There's been no gains, so I'm just going to go keep it simple here. Circle the big cities, since there's been no gains or losses in the early report. Lysychansk, Severodonetsk, Izium, Lehman. Now let's keep it simple today with Ukrainian-controlled cities. Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Bakhmut, Seversk. That's a bad one. Seversk. And Advidka is down here. Right? These are the main Ukrainian cities. There's a couple more, but since there hasn't been any gains today, those are the main ones I will highlight. Got purple for the main ground lines of communication, supply lines that the Russians and Ukrainians are using. E40 highway, which goes from Izium all the way to Bakhmut through Sloviansk. Okay, that's the E40. Then you got the T1302 highway, which goes from Bakhmut to Lysychansk, all through the Russian territory now. Okay, and then keeping it extra simple. If I have to highlight any individual territories, I will. So you got the Ukrainian retreat into Seversk, and then you got them retreating down to Bakhmut along the T0513. I don't think I need to highlight that yet. Similar to the retreat, you have the Russian advance. They're following right behind them. Assessed Russian advance, and I'll draw a couple arrows here. Okay. That's all I need to draw for now. E40. And then the T1302 highway. The two main ground lines of communication. Okay. Then I'll do a key here so you know what you're looking at. If you're just starting to tune in with us, make it a little bit thicker. A little bit thicker. All right. That is Russian-controlled cities. Ukraine, little map key. Okay, Ukraine. And then we got purple. And this is going to be for all the territories that I'm going through. For all 3 fronts. I'm not going to redraw the key again on the next 2. So this is just, keep this in mind for as we go into the northeast and the southern axes. These are the basics. No. Block. Which maybe we can do this in post, but GLOC stands for ground line of communication. Maybe put that at the bottom layer, like ground line of communication, right? That's what GLOC, aka a road, supply line, right? Where they resupply, where their troops move, both Ukraine and Russia, because as you can see, both the T-1302 and the E-40 go into Russian-held territory, and they're into just the white space in Ukraine. That is Ukraine's own cities. Now let's get into it. And then whenever I'm going to highlight in a specific area, like say I want to talk about Lysychansk or Kremet and Severodonetsk, and you're like, well, where the hell is that? You just drew all over this map. I don't know where that is. I'm going to use the green, right? So if I want to circle an area I'm referencing, I will use green here. Or if I'm going to highlight the highway I'm talking about, I'll use the lime green and move it around. Now let's get into it. So, the main effort is Eastern Ukraine, comprised of 1 subordinate and 3 supporting efforts. Subordinate main effort: encirclement of Ukrainian troops in the cauldron between Izium and Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. Go full screen here. Edit this quick. You can edit this out. Nope. That's the one I need. Edit this part out. We're making videos. I'm trying to get used to making videos here. So, start from here. The main effort is Eastern Ukraine, comprised of 1 subordinate and 3 supporting efforts. The subordinate main effort is the encirclement of Ukrainian troops in the cauldron between Izium and Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. Supporting effort number 1 is Kharkiv City. Supporting effort number 2 is the southern axes. We're going to talk about mobilization and force generation efforts, and then we're going to finish up with activities in Russian occupied areas and just talk about the updates going on in like Kherson, Melitopol, Mariupol, Berdyansk, Donetsk, Luhansk, and give an update on the Russification attempts that are going on within those cities. So the main effort is Eastern Ukraine. Russian forces conducted continued offensive operations southeast of Izium and west of Lyman towards Sloviansk on July 6th. So that's going to be in this region we're talking about. Talking about here, Izium and Lyman. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that Russian forces unsuccessfully attempted to advance from Dovenki to Maznivka, about 20 kilometers northwest of Sloviansk along the Kharkiv-Donetsk Oblast border. The UK Ministry of Defense noted that Russian forces have likely advanced 5 kilometers towards Sloviansk along the E40 highway and are now within 16 kilometers north of Sloviansk itself, which is consistent with the study of war's current control of terrain assessments. NASA Fire Information for Resource Management data shows cluster fires around Ria Hodork, indicating that Russian forces are likely continuing to conduct strikes east of Sloviansk to set conditions for westward advances from the Lyman area. So that's going on in here. Fires in this region, in the green. Okay, and the advance from Lyman. So this is where that is talking about. Advance in this region. The Russians going from the northeast to the southwest from their advance, and then also from the northwest to the southeast. So they're advancing from 2 directions. They're advancing on Sloviansk, or they're preparing to advance from here, okay, with the arrows pointed down towards Sloviansk, and also from up here. They're preparing. Still have been unsuccessful. Here's the 2 areas of approach on Sloviansk from from Izium and Lyman. All right, let's get into the next one. Get into the next update. Russian forces continued offensive operations towards Seversk from west of Lysychansk and the Luhansk border on July 6th. All right, we're moving We're moving over here now. So now we're talking about this area. Okay. Here's Seversk, where Ukrainians are, and here's Lysychansk, where now the Russians control that city as the Russians are advancing westward. Luhansk Oblast Administration head Sergei Hadai stated that Russian and Ukrainian troops continue to fight near Lysychansk along the Luhansk Oblast border. The Ukrainian General Staff also stated that Russian forces unsuccessfully fought around Spirny, which is 15 kilometers southeast of Seversk, Vernomakronovsky, which is 5 kilometers east of Seversk, Horlivka, which is 10 kilometers northeast of Seversk, and Bilohorivka, 15 kilometers northeast of Seversk. So that, just to highlight that, that's all going on in this here. Right? In the shaded lime green region, all of that is in here. Okay, all those cities I just mentioned, all going on there. Russian forces continued ground attacks south of Bakhmut on July 6th. All right, now we're moving on down. South of Bakhmut. Now we're talking about this Ukrainian city. And where are we talking about here? Do I need to draw some more arrows? The Ukrainian General Staff stated that Ukrainian troops repelled attempted Russian advances in the direction of Mironivka, Luhansky, Holymanivsky, Novoluhansky, and Vershnaya, all south of Bakhmut, and near the critical E40 or T0513 highways that run north into Bakhmut. So, I need to add on here real quick. Ukrainians repelled attacks from the south of Bakhmut. Make it a little brighter. Oops. A little skinnier. Okay, I need to draw Horlivka. I need to circle Horlivka now, because that's mentioned. This is where the Russians are coming from. Make it a little thicker. Thicker. There we go. The E40 highway is over here as well, so let me annotate that. Okay, E40 here from Izium to Sloviansk to Bakhmut, and it also goes down. It also continues on down into Horlivka. And where we're talking about, and I'll read it one more time. In here. Okay. Russian forces continued ground attacks south of Bakhmut on July 6th. The Ukrainian General Staff stated that Ukrainian troops repelled attempted Russian advances in the direction of Mironivka, Luhansky, Holomanivsky, Novohulansky, and Vershnaya, all south of Bakhmut and near the critical E40 or T0513 highways that run north into Bakhmut. Residents of Bakhmut observed direct Russian artillery strikes on the city, indicating that Russian forces are continuing to set conditions to launch an assault on the city itself. So let's draw some arrows then. Russian advance. Getting ready this way. Some arrows towards Bakhmut. Russian forces in the Donetsk city area continue to fire on Ukrainian positions along the Advidka-Donetsk city line of contact, but did not make any confirmed advances on July 6th. So that now, let's get out of Bakhmut. Now this is in Advidka. That's down here. Nothing new. Just shelling the city down here of Advidka, but no assessed Russian advance. So for the whole day, there was nothing. No advance by the Russian military, no advance by Ukrainian military in terms of their counteroffensives going on here, which is west of Izium and southwest of Izium. So nothing to report from the Ukraine side. Nothing. No territory gains or losses. Russians are on a are being reported to be on a tactical pause right now. This is the report. The Russians are regrouping, getting new equipment, fresh equipment to the front line. We've already been seeing videos of the railhead and T-80 tanks coming through, fresh T-80 tanks. They got to get new conscripts on the front line, and they're going to be getting their stuff bolstered, their frontline troops bolstered, so they can press into Bakhmut and Seversk next. Okay, and the Russian Ministry of Defense has not claimed any territorial gains since July 3rd, supporting the assessment that Russian forces are conducting an operational pause, while still engaging in limited ground attacks to set conditions for more significant offensive operations. So no territorial gains in the last 3 days from Russia, minus the incremental ones, like ones that are like a house or maybe like a half of a city block within certain regions. But beyond that, nothing in the last 3 days. They're preparing for another push into the next two Ukrainian cities, and even in Sloviansk as well. It could be three. Could be three, the next push. So they're preparing to push into Sloviansk. Here, draw that back again. Preparing to advance into Bakhmut from the south into the east. And then Seversk, it'd be from the east and from the north. Well, the northeast, kind of. Northeast, technically. So there's where I'll draw some fresh arrows in here. Here's where these next cities are under threat. From here, and then I already have the red arrow there, and then you already have the arrows in. Okay. Kramatorsk and Druzhivka and Kostyanivka are going to become cities where Ukrainians are going to be retreating to for safety. That's Druzhivka, Kostyanivka. These are going to be the safe harbor cities next, and Kramatorsk, where the railway is. Train station here in Kramatorsk can get people to the west. If the Russians are able to get into this territory, that railway and that railhead and that rail line are likely going to be threatened of artillery strikes upon it. So I'm hoping Ukraine is getting as many of their civilians out of this area as possible while the Russians are advancing, or right now, while they're on a tactical pause. That is the update in the east, in the far east, for the day. Now let's get up into the Kharkiv Oblast. And let's get up into Kharkiv, and I'll provide the update here. Circle some of the major areas. Kharkiv in Ukraine, Belgorod in Russia. Those are the main two. The main ground line of communication, the E105 and the T2117. These are the main two ground lines of communication here. Okay. E105, T2117. I better circle Zolochiv too, because that's what it connects to. Okay. So E105, T2117, the main two ground lines of communication and supply lines for the Russians and the Ukrainians. Let's see what the update is here. Oh, and the E40 highway. I should draw that too. Here's the E40, which goes right into Kharkiv. Down towards Izium, all the way down. That E40 highway goes down, down, down. All right, let's get the update. Kharkiv City. Russian forces continued attempting limited ground assaults north of Kharkiv City on July 6th. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that Russian forces repelled a Russian assault in the direction of Kosacha, Lopan, Sonivka. Russian Telegram channel Rebar claimed that fighting is ongoing west of Sosnivka and Slechiny, which is 8 kilometers southwest of Sosnivka, as well as Potminik, 20 kilometers north of Kharkiv city. Russian forces continued air and artillery strikes on Ukrainian force concentrations and military and civilian infrastructure in Kharkiv city and the surrounding settlements. The Derachi City Council reported that Russian forces shelled Derachi with incendiary munitions. Russian forces shelled Derachi, Maladanivka, Prudyanivka, and Slanatny along the T2117 highway and the Potomnik on the E105 highway to Kharkiv city. So all of that, just shellings from all of that. Russian shellings along the E105 and the T2117. Put those in green. Nothing reported for territory gains or losses. Shellings. Those represent artillery strikes. All right. I still need a graphic here to represent the artillery strikes going on, but that is it. No losses, no advances, nothing here in the Kharkiv Oblast to report. Just shellings of cities. Now let's go to the southern axes here for July 6, 2022. Go to the southern axes. Let's highlight some of the main Ukrainian and Russian-held cities here as well. Start with the Russian cities, the Russian-held. Here's Kherson, Melitopol, Mariupol. Berdyansk hasn't made the list lately. Let's just do those three and see if I need to highlight any more for the day. Try to keep the least amount of clutter on the map as I can. And here's the E58. The main ground line of communication supply line for the Russian military from west to east along the southern axes. Goes all the way into Russia. E58. Okay. Now let's do the Ukrainian cities. Mykolaiv, ugly circle. Mykolaiv, Zaporizhia, Kryvyi Rih. So where the Ukrainian counteroffensives are coming from. Okay. Perfect. And now let's get into it. These are the main areas of approach. You got Mykolaiv, and again, I will highlight in green. The city of Mykolaiv here in the west. Kryvyi Rih, Zaporizhia, for the Ukrainian cities. Oh, goodness. Then you have Kherson, Melitopol, and Mariupol for the main three Russian-held Ukrainian cities in the south. Let's get into it here. Russian forces conducted unsuccessful offensive operations in northwestern Kherson Oblast and are continuing to fire artillery throughout the southern axes to repel Ukrainian counteroffensives. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that Ukrainian forces stopped Russian assaults in the direction of Lazov on the eastern bank of the Inhluets River along the Kherson-Mykolaiv Oblast border. Firms reportedly since data showed a high number of fires along the Kherson-Mykolaiv and Kherson-Dnipropetrovsk Oblast border. Geolocated footage showed Russian and Ukrainian forces engaged in artillery fire near Chernivka and Andriivka on the Kherson-Mykolaiv Oblast border. The Ukrainian Southern Operational Command added that Russian forces launched missile strikes on residential infrastructure in Nachany, which is approximately 33 kilometers west of Mykolaiv city. But Russian Telegram channels claim that Russian missiles struck Ukrainian positions. Ukrainian forces continue to set conditions for a counteroffensive on Kherson City. Geolocated satellite imagery showed that Ukrainian forces struck Russian positions around Kherson City International Airport in the Chornoborivka area. Kherson Oblast Administration head Serhiy Klan reported that Ukrainian forces also struck a Russian ammunition depot in Kherson City's railway station on July 5th. Ukrainian advisor to the Internal Affairs Minister Anton Grunachenko published social media footage showing Russian forces installed countermeasures against precision-guided munitions on the Kerch Bridge. So just more defensive positioning, getting ready for preparing for Ukrainian counteroffensives. And here's the Kryvyi Rih. Here is the Inhluets River to the southwest of Kryvyi Rih, where the fighting is going on, where the firms from NASA is showing the fires there. And I'll include the firms reports going forward in the next video and in the next live stream, which if you want to tune into these map updates live, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel and make sure you have your notifications on. The live streams are broadcasted every night at 8 p.m. Central Time. And we also have the firms from up here, the Zaporizhia border. I'll have those firms reports tomorrow. So that is in the southern axes. That is the latest update. No territorial gains or losses. Nothing to report on Ukrainian counteroffensives. Just more Russian preparation, defensive preparation in Kherson. And just we'll get into the activities in the occupied areas in Mariupol and Melitopol and Kherson. So now we'll talk about activities in these occupied cities in Ukraine. And let's highlight them across the map. Full map. So still going to be red for Russian cities. Kherson, Melitopol, Mariupol, Donetsk, Luhansk, Severodonetsk, Lysychansk, Izium, Lyman. These are the biggest ones. The biggest ones. Now we'll talk about it. Mobilization and force generation efforts. Russian objective: expand combat power without conducting general mobilization. Russian forces began accumulating military equipment at the 1st Guards Tank Army training ground in Melino, Nizhny Novgorod Oblast, likely to support the formation of a new military unit. Ukraine's conflict intelligence team observed Russian military vehicles, presumably taken out of storage, heading towards Melino over the past few weeks. The CIT added that unnamed Russian military source claimed that Russian military commanders are forming a 3rd Army Corps in Melino, but it is unclear if the Russians are creating a 3rd Corps within the Russian ground forces proper or integrating the new unit within existing LNR and DNR 1st and 2nd Army Corps or some other organization. So they're unclear if they're going to integrate them into the Russian military or if they're going to integrate them into the separatists held military or another option, maybe into their private military group. They have to have some training to be in those, though. The Russian ground forces command structure does not currently have a regular corps echelon. It retains isolated corps associated with some fleet and in Kaliningrad. CIT noted that such evidence supports former Kyiv Oblast administration head Alexander Poluk's reports that Russian forces are forming a 15,500 person strong 3rd Army Corps within the Western Military District. Study work cannot independently verify CIT or Polyuk's statements, but the Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu had reportedly announced plans to create 12 new WMD units of unspecified echelon in May 20th. Russian forces continue to face personnel generation and covert mobilization challenges. Director of Rochan Consulting Konrad Muzkia cited Finnish outlet Yili, which noted that Russian army has sent at least 1 battalion tactical group BTG from the 80th Arctic Motorized Rifle Brigade, previously stationed close to the Finnish border in Alklurdi, to support the invasion of Ukraine. The satellite imagery showed that Russian forces have withdrawn 100 military vehicles in May from Al-Kurdi, and roughly 700 servicemen left the base in mid-May. The 80th Arctic Motorized Rifle Brigade was reportedly the last northern brigade to enter the Russian war in Ukraine. Pro-Kremlin media outlets announced the deployment of a new volunteer battalion from the Republic of Bashkortostan, north of the Kazakhstan, to Donbass on July 6th. The Russian organization, quote, Veterans of the Marine Corps and Special Forces of the Navy, announced the creation of the battalion at the end of May and noted that servicemen received a month of training before their deployment. A month is likely not enough time to sufficiently prepare for battalion or frontline hostilities in the Donbass. The Republic of Bashkortostan and the Russian Defense Ministry financially incentivized servicemen by offering 200,000 rubles for signing the military contract and 2,000 rubles for every day served. The Russian outlet Baza also reported that 3 unknown assailants conducted an unspecified attack on the 488th Motorized Rifle Regiment of the 20th Combined Arms Army Military Unit in Klinsky, Bryansk Oblast, likely in protest of Russian covert mobilization practices. 200,000 rubles and $2,000 a day. Sign your life away. Sign on the dotted line. Or here, give us your personal information so we can force you to the front lines into conscription. That's what they're doing here. We'll talk about it. Activity in Russian occupied areas. Russian objective, consolidate administrative control of occupied areas, set conditions for potential annexation into the Russian Federation or some other future political arrangement of Moscow's choosing. Russian authorities continued to take measures to extend administrative control of occupied areas of Ukraine on July 6th. The Russian-backed head of the Kharkiv Oblast administration, Vitaly Ganichev, claimed that Russian forces control approximately 20% of the Kharkiv Oblast and that Russian authorities intend to create 4 occupational districts in the Kharkiv Oblast, the Izium, Kupiansk, Vovchansk, and Kharkiv districts. Ganichev also claimed that residents of occupied Kharkiv Oblast are voicing a widespread desire for Russian citizenship and inquiring about Russian passports. Ukraine's Kherson Oblast head Serhiy Klan, however, indicated that Russian authorities will likely struggle to impose effective passportization measures in occupied Kherson Oblast, problems that will likely also supply other areas of Ukraine. Klan also stated that even if Russian authorities distribute 200 passports a day with no days off, they will only distribute 6,000 passports in 1 month, which amounts to a small portion of the entire population living in occupied Kherson. Klan also reported that the majority of those waiting in queues for Russian passports and pensioners. This is notable because of recent reports that Russian authorities in Kherson instituted ruble payments for pensioners, that receiving pensions is contingent on holding a Russian passport. The okie doke. In order to get your pension payment, you have to have a Russian passport. They're forcing it. It's not by choice. It's not like getting a Russian passport's a good thing. It means that in order to get paid, which, by the way, they've changed the payment to rubles, so in order to even get that, you have to get your Russian passport. And they're taking the citizens that are getting their Russian passports and conscripting them into the Russian military. They are going to apartment, like landlords or apartment managers, and getting the information of those living in the apartments in occupied Ukrainian cities, and then conscripting them into the Russian military or whatever option they have between. If it's not the Russian military, it's the DNR or the LNR or another option. Russian authorities will likely continue to struggle to effectively carry out passportization and rely heavily on coercing residents of occupied areas into Russian citizenship, because they're not going to volunteer to do so. They're not going to do it, on their own free will. Russia has to force them to do this, and by coercing them through their payments, because again, they're going to make money. They have to make money, and ruble is the only thing they're paying. And in order to get your payment, you have to become a Russian citizen. Do you see the okie dokes? Do you see the hoops that they're jumping through, and the amount of gotchas they're doing here? There's no wins when you're occupied by Russia. There's no freedom there. You're occupied. And that is the update. The map update. One more time. Key takeaways on the map. I'm going to have this full screen. Key takeaways for the day. The Russian Ministry of Defense has not claimed any territorial gain since July 3rd, supporting the assessment that Russian forces are conducting an operational pause while still engaging in limited ground attacks to set conditions for more significant offensive operations. The Kremlin continues to prepare for a protracted war by setting conditions for crypto mobilization of the economy and largely initiating an operational pause in Ukraine. Russian forces conducted offensive operations northwest and east of Sloviansk. Russian forces conducted continued efforts to push westward towards Siversk from the Luhansk-Donetsk Oblast border. Russian forces continued attempts to advance toward Bakhmut from the south. Russian forces conducted limited ground attacks north of Kharkiv city. Russian forces conducted unsuccessful ground assaults in northwestern Kherson Oblast. Ukrainian forces may be setting conditions for counteroffensives towards Kherson city. And finally, Russian forces may be forming a new military unit in Melino in the Nizhny Novgorod Oblast. And that is your map update for July 6, 2022. Hey, for more map updates, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure you're following us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. We have a Patreon in the description if you guys want to support these videos, and they do take some time to be edited. If you want to support, join the Patreon. Thank you guys for all the support, and let me know any changes that could be made or anything you'd like added to these map updates in the comments below. Thank you guys again for tuning in. All right, y'all, that is the map update. That is a map update that I provide, and that will be edited and posted to the channel in between every single live stream if you guys are looking for such a thing. All right, now we're going to be getting into the video clips update and any video that's come out, and also if you guys have any video that you want me to check out or pull up on the live stream, join our Discord server. We have an amazing Discord server. There's nearly like 4,000 people in that thing. Join that, and then you can share videos that you come across during your own research and whatnot of your Ukraine war digestion. If you come across anything you want me to pull up for the viewers to watch, that's a great place to join. I directly pull videos from there and pull them up onto the live stream. All right, so let's get into it. Let's get into it. In the first report, here is new American weapons arriving within Ukraine. Let's get that from 13 News Now.
Well, now to the latest on the war in Ukraine and advanced U.S. weapons arriving on the battlefield and possibly...
Oh, she had a stutter. I can stutter too.
...possibly already making a difference in the fight against Russian forces. ABC's James Longman has more.
A special inside look at the new U.S. weapons now arriving in Ukraine.
HIMARS are some of Ukraine's most highly valued weapons. They're terrified, really, of the Russians finding out where they are, so we're being taken to this secret location.
In the wide open spaces of this vast country, Ukrainian forces use these woods for cover.
These are the rockets being loaded onto the U.S. HIMARS high-mobility artillery rocket systems. These are the weapons that Ukraine says are making all the difference in its war for the very simple reason that they fire further than anything Ukraine currently has in its artillery. The other important detail is that they're truck-mounted, which means once they're fired, these guys can move.
We can use them to find targets in Russian-controlled territory that no other weapon can get to. This HIMARS commander tells me. We've hit command centers and ammunition stores. The strike is part of the battle for the Donbass, where Russian forces have recently claimed control of Luhansk, the northern province of the region. The fighting there fierce as Ukrainian forces try to fend off Russia as it looks to take the rest of the Donbass. Key Ukrainian-held cities in the region coming under attack. In Sloviansk, Russian missiles destroying a local market. And the city of Kramatorsk facing intense shelling as Russian forces move in on Donetsk.
The Ukrainians will be hoping that these HIMARS make them better able to defend Donetsk. That's the second half of the Donbass region, which is now in Vladimir Putin's sights. James Longman, ABC News, in the Kharkiv region of Ukraine.
And then to provide an update on that, actually, and I just pulled it up, is Russia has claimed to have destroyed 2 of those. Let's pull up that article real quick. Those HIMARS systems, let's get that. Russia says it destroyed 2 U.S. HIMARS systems in East Ukraine, while Kyiv rejects the claim. So you got back and forth informational warfare going on here with this. From Moscow, July 6th, the Russian Defense Ministry said on Wednesday that its armed forces had destroyed 2 advanced U.S.-made HIMARS rocket systems and their ammunition depots in eastern Ukraine, an assertion later rejected by Kyiv. Moscow said it had destroyed 2 launchers for the high-mobility artillery rocket systems, which is HIMARS, and that the United States and its allies have been supplying to Kyiv. It also said Russian forces destroyed 2 ammunition depots, storing rockets for the HIMARS near the front line in a village south of Kramatorsk in Ukraine's Donetsk region, the main focus for Russian troops after the capture of Luhansk on Sunday. The ministry released footage which it said showed the strike. Reuters could not independently verify the strike. Ukraine's general staff rejected Russia's account later on Wednesday in a post on Twitter. It said the claims were, quote, fake, and that it was using the U.S.-supplied HIMARS to inflict devastating blows on Russian forces. Ukraine had only received 4 systems as of early July, the European Council on Foreign Relations said in a report. The United States has pledged to deliver 8 more by mid-July. Western weapon supplies have been crucial to Ukraine's efforts to push back the tens of thousands of Russian troops that Moscow sent in its pro-Western neighbor on February 24th that it calls a, quote, special military operation. So, Russia claims that it destroyed 2 of them. Ukraine says it didn't. Western media can't verify Russia's claims. Let's get another report. The war zone. Where Ukraine disputes Russia's proofless claim that it destroyed HIMARS launchers. Russia claims that it destroyed 2 U.S.-provided high-mobility artillery rocket systems, or HIMARS, in eastern Ukraine that are not substantiated, and Ukraine is outright calling them a lie. High-precision air-based missiles have destroyed Quote, high-precision air-based missiles have destroyed 2 U.S.-made HIMARS multiple-launch rocket launchers and 2 ammunition depots near Malatarovka in the Donetsk People's Republic. The Russian Ministry of Defense said Wednesday morning on its Telegram channel. As its proof, it distributed a video that showed a Russian aircraft firing on what appears to be missiles at a target on the ground. The video then depicts a plume after an impact along a treed area seen through an infrared imager. Another infrared video shows missiles of some sort striking an area near an industrial park or farm, followed by a plume. It then cuts to what appears to be a drone video from the moment of impact in a different tree-lined area. Well, let's check out the video, shall we? Let's see it for ourselves. 34-second video. It's not looking good already. I'm not liking this. 2 U.S. HIMARS destroyed. Oh yeah, that's the footage right there. Yep. That doesn't even look like HIMARS trucks right there. Whoa. Whoa. We're in a different area now? What just happened? Okay. I don't even know what's going on there. This is like... No. Whoa, no. Yo, we've seen video of this. This long building. And we've seen strikes on it. But it wasn't from Russia. Russia had equipment in here in this long ass tin building. I remember this specific region in video clips. If you guys can come up with it real fast while I'm live, send it to the Discord server. I literally remember specific video from this area. And it was from Ukraine. So and then where is this? Yeah, Slinky, you saw that, I swear to God. Come out, try to look. Yo, internet sleuths, come up with this video. Because the trolls will say that I'm lying or I'm a CIA operative or some bullshit. But this is a very specific, I remember this building. It's a long-ass building and they're keeping trucks in there. And we saw it get destroyed. Send that to the server. I'll keep the Discord open and I'll shout you out if you can come up with it. I don't have it ready and I got to keep it rolling. Send it to the video clips section on the Ukraine war channel. All right, if you can come up with it. I call garbage. Here's another one. The Russian Ministry of Defense proof of 2 HIMARS launchers destroyed is pretty obvious, or is pretty hilarious.
Малотарановка Донецкой Народной Республики высокоточными ракетами воздушного базирования. Уничтожены 2 пусковые установки системы залпового огня HIMARS.
It was in color too. It wasn't in black and white, and the camera angle was from like right here. If you think like the camera was here, where this kind of ironically where this arrow is kind of, and the camera was looking this way in this direction towards the building. Camera was situated from over here, a drone. So I don't know what the hell that is. Russian Ministry of Defense, a bush. Is this HIMARS? Well, what do we think? We saw a video. We saw the reports. You've seen the devastation that the HIMARS are providing. Here's some HIMARS devastation on Russian positions. You calling BS?
Там граната, блядь.
Ну открой, заведется, блядь, стопудово.
Думаешь?
Не думаю, а уверен, блядь.
Thinking fake news. Thinking Russian fake news, dude.
Бак. Как он...
They're scared. The Russians are scared of these HIMARS systems. These high mobility rocket systems. They can move. They're fast as fuck, boy. They can get in and out of an area very quickly. They can move on terrain. They can move in terrain that's like marshy terrain or uneven terrain. They can go off the main roads and use those. And then get the hell up out of there. Those are the HIMARS being used. As of Wednesday morning, the Pentagon declined to comment on Wednesday's Russian HIMARS destruction claims. If that changes, they'll let us know. Given the brutal nature of war and Russia's use of massive long-range fires, it's likely that one day it might actually hit a HIMARS. But it would seem there is no proof that today is that day. No proof. We need to go through another source. We went through Reuters and the Drive. We went through video already. I don't think there's any more on that. So I had someone even say it, that the Russians had destroyed a HIMARS. 2 of them. Not true. This was reportedly a Russian tank.
Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
That's how some of y'all be. Back it up with the source. A German-made PZH 2000 howitzer in Ukrainian service. Here's those German howitzers that we looked at the report from the other day, and now they're in Ukraine. Look like a turtle shell. Okay. Those Panzer howitzers. Video of Ukrainian air defense is reportedly intercepting Russian missiles. Telling you what, Ukraine needs more artillery. Sending like literally, like, dude. Talk about, and that's what I don't understand, those that are on the Russian narrative that are saying that this is a proxy war for the West, when the West is literally giving Ukraine crumbs. Like we're not even giving them the best of, like the HIMARS system is great. That's a good piece of equipment, but we're giving them our old shit, or shit that is in use that we're not even using anymore. Old stuff. Like we're giving them our hand-me-downs, and we're giving them like onesies and twosies of it. We're not giving them like a full like a full battery supply. Like they're getting like 4 or like 6 or like, you know what I mean, not even just from the US, it's from Germany or from they're getting like less than 10 of them. They're not even getting a bunch when they do get these pieces of equipment. Video reportedly showing of a Russian missile intercepted by Ukrainian air defenses over Dnipro. If this was really a proxy war, United States would have sent A-10s, dude. Taking care of Russia's garbage tanks. They'd be sending them real equipment. And at this point, if we're going to keep sending them money, I really wish that they would just send them the shit they need. And then just get it over with instead of playing with old equipment. I mean, I guess we got to get rid of them. It's the United States. From the United States perspective, it's like on one hand we're getting rid of the old equipment, and it's not like it's getting thrown out. Like Ukrainians are using it, but we're not giving them our best equipment right now. A photo of the Russian Tiger that hit a mine looks like troop compartment may have withstood the explosion. They're getting our Humvees. The U.S. Army isn't even going to be using Humvees anymore. Or I don't know. I got out in 2016. Is the Army still using those? The 1151s? They're starting to train on the new shits from Oshkosh. Video of Russian Tor TLAR. This is Russian counter-surveillance electronic warfare equipment. Okay, so Russian Tor TLAR. Those things also have missile capabilities too, like a cruise missile counter surveillance piece of equipment. Big old tuberculosis machine. And better watch where you're sitting those things. Video of a Russian Razdvitsy SPG-9, a coordinate ATGM, and a UAV. The Russian video. Russian equipment, Russian soldiers.
Корнет вообще очень универсальный птур, очень мобильный. Переносится на треноги и стреляет.
Real, we have the, I don't speak Russian, but in Kuwait, right, we have football fields like stacked of equipment that is just collecting dust from the Afghanistan and Iraq. It's just sitting there, millions upon millions upon millions, probably billions. I don't know, millions for sure. Video of Russian Buk, likely a Buk M1 9A310 M12 Talar in the Kharkiv Oblast. How do I know this? I personally delivered a fuckload of them, a fuckload of equipment to those motor pools, and I know where they're sitting. We have a shitload of Seversk and Bakhmut from being taken. The Ukrainians need more heavy equipment like now. They need more heavy weapons, more HIMARS systems in the east. Otherwise, the Russians will take Seversk and Bakhmut. There's a Vidka video showing an R-18 UAV dropping ammunition on Russian vehicle. All right. So, video of Russian Spetsnaz and Rezdvichti firing at PKM and an abandoned Ukrainian S-300 TEL at close range. Not sure why you would publish this. Okay, so you got a Russian Spetsnaz firing at PKM and an abandoned vehicle. Probably for their videos.
Огонь.
One more time. What a
Готов? Готов.
instant karma. Just took themselves out there. Not sure why you would publish that. Video of the Russian Mi-28N and Ka-52 helicopters firing rockets at the Lysychansk oil refinery. There were reportedly 6 helicopters firing on the refinery. Reportedly 6 helicopters firing on it. Helicopter battles going on. Russian. There's a Ka-52. That's Ka-52 helicopters, or part 2. Yep. This is in Lysychansk by the oil refinery. So, like, real quick, I'll show you on the map real fast where this is. Okay, clear that. That's going to be like, so here's Lysychansk, where the Ukrainians just retreated out of. Oil refineries down here. So this is where you're looking at. Here's Severodonetsk. Ukrainians are leaving like this, out of Lysychansk, and then the Russians advanced from the south and from the east. So the Russians advanced from up here and from here, crossing the river. Russians are right behind, working their way west. Lysychansk.
Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is...
Oh, we got a little slow-mo. Russia Today putting a little slow-mo on the videos. Okay. Those are those two videos, Mi-28s and Ka-52 helicopters. At the end there, that slow-mo video was of an Mi-28. Here's Ukrainian Su-24 and Su-27 aircraft over Odessa. Some of their fighter jets. Ukrainian fighter jets over Odessa. Here's what a Wagner private military contractor looks like. Wagner Group, private military contractors. Russian artillery strikes captured by the Zala UAV on a Ukrainian river crossing on the Seversky Donetsk and the Zalmyan from a week ago. The crossing of the Seversky Donetsk River in the east. Gotta be careful. I don't know if that's copyrighted or not. Let's do a viewer check-in. Comment where you guys are tuned in from, what city, what state, or where in the world you're watching from. Comment in our live chat. Smash the like button on YouTube if you haven't. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure you're following us on Facebook. I'm going to start doing a question section towards the end of the stream. If you guys have any questions for me that I can't answer, save them for the end. If we don't have any questions, then that'll be it. What up, Syracuse, Waterford, Ontario, Canada, Cobb Hill, Chico, California, North Dallas, Texas. Great to be here. Great to have you. About a 2-minute long video. Russian UAV targeting Ukrainian targets along the Seversky Donetsk River. Tampa, Florida, Jefferson, Oregon, Montreal, Canada, how you doing, Mississippi, Louisville, how you doing from Rhode Island, hello from Deep River, Michigan, Anchorport, Alaska, Massachusetts, 508, East Texas, Tampa, Florida. All right. Now we're going to continue on video of Russian Ka-52 ATGM strikes from a week ago. Let's hold off on week-old clips. Video reportedly of a close miss from a Ukrainian man-pads. On a Russian Ka-52 helicopter, they brought their man-pads. Never leave the house without your man-pad. Thank you so much, Kathy, for that. Thank you. Kathy Shinek on Facebook. Thank you so much. Okay, and a near miss from the Ukrainian man-pads. Video of aftermath of artillery strikes by Ukraine's 45th Artillery Brigade on Russian trucks of BMP-2 and other vehicles in Dnipro. Photo compilation. Thank you, Todd. Thank you so much. Okay, aftermath of artillery strikes. You got members of Novosibirsk sober at the Antonov airport from March. Antonov airport photos. Another video of Russian Mi-8 MTPR Reichschav AVEW helicopter. Got two of them. I'm hoping my Facebook ban goes away. It says it's still in review. So just showing what the Mi-8M looks like. No combat footage there. Just a training flyover video. Video of Russian precision guided. Nope, 2 weeks old. Don't need it. An oil facility in Donetsk is on fire 9 hours ago. So more infrastructure within the city of Donetsk becoming on fire as the days go by. Fire in Donetsk. Video of Russian Central Military District Smerch multiple launch rocket systems in Ukraine. So you got Russian Smerch trucks, Smerch rockets. Smerch trucks sound like seafood trucks. Jay Grant says, "Hi Andrew, I've been watching The Enforcer, but interested in watching your war coverage. Are you still on call for covering protests in Minneapolis, or should anything flare up?" Well, it's not like I'm on call. I own my own media. Like Mercado Media is an LLC. Like I own my own. It's like a business. I gotta pay every year to keep running. And it's whenever I can get myself out there, or I get the resources to do so. I am very independent. I don't have any corporate ownings of me. It's just me. So it's whenever I can get out there. I'm currently in a rejuvenation time where I'm just kind of doing this from home. 2020 and 2021 were long years out there, like doing that. So I know the next election cycle is going to be the similar, and I'll be out there. The midterm elections are coming up, and you'll see me out there for sure. So if you're looking for like protest coverage or what you've been seeing in 2020 and 2021, and if you're used to that from me, that will still be a thing. I'm just going to continue on with my war coverage here, but that will continue to be a thing. Video of a Ukrainian UAV dropping ammunition through the driver's hatch of a Russian T-62M tank. It may have been abandoned. An abandoned T-62. I lost a lot. I lost listen, I used to have, when I started the war coverage, I lost like a third of my viewers, I'd say. We had like nearly 2,000 viewers a night, and then I had to move. So if you're coming back here and you're wondering like where the hell I was, I had to move into my apartment in April and May, so I wasn't live for like 3 weeks, and shit killed me. Killed Mercado Media, but we're still going. We will prevail. Here's some more photos of Ukrainian UAZ 452 Budganka with an M60 machine gun. Look at that. They got the M60 mounted in that thing on the top. That takes technical to a whole new level in the safety meeting bus. Have a safety meeting, mounted safety meeting in there. Video of a UAV corrected artillery fire on Russian positions by Aerodzvidka Carlson. In a Scooby van. Better be careful, I don't know if that's copyrighted. It sounds like menu music. UAV corrected artillery fire on Russian positions. Sounds like racing menu music. We're looking at Russian positions in these residential areas that are being struck by Ukrainian artillery. Kelly asks, why is Russia using so many resources to fight the troops when all they could do is capture Zelensky? Could they? I'm pretty sure they tried and failed. That's exactly what the Russians thought too. That's what they attempted. They attempted to take Kyiv. We sat here and watched it live. We're watching CNN camera crew doing cocaine, getting ready to be captured by the Russians in Kyiv. They tried it. Video of Russian Grad K multiple launch rocket systems in the Kherson Oblast. And that's not counting the assassination attempts on the man. All right, well, there's multiple launch rocket system, Grad fire in Kherson. They thought they sent enough. They failed. Video of Russian missile failures in Belgorod. Presumably these are Iskander M's. Yeah, I done lost a lot of my viewers, but I'm gaining people back now. Over the last week or so, we've been like nearing 500 again per stream. I was like sitting at like 300. I got hurt. Spread the word. That's the only thing I can ask y'all. If you guys are enjoying this coverage and you know people that would also enjoy informative coverage of the war in Ukraine, I try to cover each side as best as I can while still letting you know that I am for the sovereignty and independence of Ukraine. I'm very much against Russia's invasion, and I can debate the pro-Russian narrative and pick that apart on multiple levels. But I'm still going to tell you about the Russian advances and the Russian successes within Ukraine, because that's important to know for the full understanding of what the hell is going on there. Another video of what looks like 2 failed Iskander M launches. Some more failed Iskander M launches in Belgorod. Shout out to our mod team. You have an amazing mod team here on Mercado Media. Helps keep the chat clear from porn bots on YouTube. and other clutter. This was posted just recently, within the last 3 hours. 2 failed Iskander M launches. Again, Belgorod failed rocket strikes in Russia, so the missile will go up and then just come right back down in Belgorod. Likely taking out civilians, and then Russia will blame Ukraine. What do you think of Pat Lancaster? You know, just the exact way you put it, Superbike. Nickname in quotes. You said it best. And that's it from Rob Lee for the latest. Let's look this up. Belgorod, to see if there's anything coming out of there. The Russian missiles are refusing to fly. In Belgorod, 2 Iskander ballistic missiles fall apart shortly after their launch to bombard Ukrainian Kharkiv city. That's what I'll show you on the map real quick, in case you're just tuning in now. If you missed our map update, you can watch the stream after the fact, or our full map breakdown will be posted tomorrow at 2 p.m. So here is where these Iskander M's are coming from. Paintbrush it up. Oh, not that one. Belgorod, that's in Russia. Here's Kharkiv. Okay, and the Russians attempted to launch an Iskander towards Kharkiv, but failed. And it failed. Put an X there. Okay, they're launching strikes from Belgorod, which is in Russia. All this is in Russia. This is Ukraine. Okay, this is the border. This is the international border, loosely, between Russia and Ukraine. Okay, lots of. You'd think there'd be a lot more back and forth fighting going on here, seeing that this is the international border between Russia and Ukraine, but majority of the ground fighting is going on in the Donbass, in the east.
Ебать! Она закрутила. Вы видели, блядь? Да. А вот слева. Что с ней? Да что ж ты у нас-то спрашиваешь, блядь? Уже второй раз.
There's the failed Iskander. And crashing and burning in the sky. That's a lot better, that's a lot clearer image than what Rob had posted. You can see it a little easier. No, that's old. July 3rd. July 2nd, that's old. July 3rd, that's old. 3rd, nope. I'm sure we'll see more. But this is the latest video.
Ебать! Она закрутила. Вы видели, блядь? Да. А вот слева. Что с ней? Да что ж ты у нас-то спрашиваешь?
It did corkscrew and almost turn around and went back.
Уже второй раз.
Let's put it this way. I would respect Lancaster more if he went to all of Ukraine and didn't just embed himself with the Russian military and parrot the Russian narrative and only the Russian narrative. I have no words. Set up scenes. He's a piece of work. Interesting. Now we're on the Ukraine video report on Reddit. No words. In the back of a truck. Z semi-truck. Ukrainians are extremely good at using HIMARS. This is what they use to transport grain. You know these grain transport trucks? Interesting. Ukrainians are extremely good at using the HIMARS system. Here the report.
Difference in the fight against Russian forces. Our foreign correspondent James Longman is on the scene for us there in Ukraine. James, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, TJ. The fight for the east of Ukraine is all about hitting targets at a distance. HIMARS, these are long-range weapons provided by the United States, are now here in the fight. And we got a first look. We were among the first people to be able to see these weapons being deployed.
This morning, a special inside look at the new US weapons now arriving in Ukraine.
HIMARS are some of Ukraine's most highly valued weapons. They're terrified, really, of the Russians finding out where they are, so we're being taken to this secret location.
In the wide open spaces of this vast country, Ukrainian forces use these woods for cover.
These are the rockets being loaded onto the US HIMARS high mobility artillery rocket system.
And that is, we've seen this.
These are the weapons that Ukraine says are making all the difference in its war for the very simple reason that they fire further than anything Ukraine currently has in its artillery.
And they need more of them. We've seen this report, though, just through a different lens. The ABC used this, and so did a different source. The HIMARS system. Ukrainian road sign. Putler. The pot is boiling. Hell is waiting.
So what does that say?
Putler. Putin. Pot is boiling. Hell is waiting for you.
Молодец.
We're in the middle of the highway. We'll come back to Zelensky. Good mortar shot by a Russian... Excuse me. Good mortar shot at a Russian IFV. So I want to be in the middle of the highway there. I'm about to get run over in that road. Saw that yesterday. Let's go to the newest. In Ukraine, rescuers found a group of puppies underneath the rubble of a destroyed building in a Russian bombardment. When they looked closer, they saw the puppies were protecting a litter of newborn kittens and refused to leave their side.
Три песенятка. І народжених малесеньких котяток багато. І песики охороняють, гарчать. Мої маленькі. Хто так гарчить? То покажіть котеняток. Покажи котеняток. Маленькі. Маленькі народилися нічкою. Так? Охоронці наші. Отакі дива бувають в світі. Лежить кіт. Три песенятка. І народжених...
And they're puppies too.
Малесеньких котяток багато. І песики охороняють, гарчать. Мої маленькі. Хто так гарчить? То покажіть котеняток. Покажи котеняток. Маленькі. Маленькі народилися нічкою. Так? Охоронці наші.
Wow. Ukraine. See, this is what I'm saying. We already watched it through Good Morning America. See, they different use the same thing. This is the other report was ABC News. This is Good Morning America, and we watched it through even a different one. We saw the Sergeant Jane mortar shots. The classic musicians are back in Kyiv.
Ukraine, Kiev emerges. Gotta love it.
So daily life is starting to return in Kyiv. The people can't get complacent, though. That's the President Zelensky continues to reiterate that. Russian troops launched missile strikes in the city of Toretsk in Donetsk region. 3 people are under the rubble. We were saying the same things in Mariupol. J-Roll, are you newer to the channel? I was saying the same things back then. I saw what it was. That's why, I mean, I don't continue to bash something when I already know that it's not what it is. I don't talk about it because I've already gone into it, I guess. Do I need to re-go into why his coverage is why it is? Realities of Russian occupation. We saw this yesterday in yesterday's stream. This is a good report here. Really good report. If you want to watch this, it's in our stream from yesterday about the forced mobilization filtration camps obtaining a Russian passport. We went into that yesterday. Let's go to the 1420 video. Russians look at destructions in Ukraine number 2. 1420, one of the best YouTube channels in Russia. Covering what everyday Russians are saying and what they think of the war in Ukraine. So credit to 1420 YouTube channel. I'll share the link to this video in our description. All that good stuff. Go support his channel. Russians look at photos of destructions in Ukraine number 2.
Различные средства массовой информации распространяют вот такие фотографии. Говорят, что типа вот в Украине такое происходит. Но вообще похоже на фейк больше или... Там вот люди говорят, какие-то полоски есть, как будто монтировали. Будет ли Россия платить вот за восстановление городов?
Нет, конечно, не. Мне жалко людей, которые гибнут из-за того, что какие-то дяди не могут разобраться между собой.
Россияне обычные как-то будут потом за это платить или нет? Там мы с вами.
Всю жизнь будут, естественно, как всегда.
Почему? Я новости слежу и смотрю, там как будто геноцид. Как будто геноцид.
Ну, качество фото не очень хорошее, но, скорее всего, возможно, фото реально. Я боюсь, что платить будем не только мы. Платить будут вообще, весь мир будет платить.
Well, the world already is. The world already is.
Операция, так называемая, наверное, немножко больше, чем операция, поэтому и есть жертвы, и там несколько миллионов человек уже беженцы, половина в России идут, половина от России бегут, но больно, конечно, на все это смотреть, наверное, наверху виднее, чего они хотят и чего они преследуют. Там есть какой-то, например, определенный какой-то план работы, и это план работы, и они выполняют.
Молодой человек, а что вы показываете это мне? Зачем мне эти фотографии? Покажите мне лучше, знаете что? Канал WNBA, который делает видео о россиянах, например, недавно он делал видео о парне, который 3 года жил в гараже. Сергей, автор канала, помогает ему выбраться из этой ситуации. Сейчас вы увидите трейлер канала WNBA.
Если у вас есть,
то есть вот сейчас полистаю.
Сострадание.
Вот Сергей меня зовут. Сергей, очень приятно, Егор. Слышишь? Смотри на эту тарелку. Господи, помилуй. Его нужно просто сейчас просто помочь, хоть как-то. Помните самый счастливый день в своей жизни?
Да, когда женился.
Когда женились?
Да! Ссылка будет в описании. Переходите, смотрите канал WNBA.
Ну, вам как кажется, то есть похоже на фотошоп?
Нет. Почему-то я уверен, что это не фотошоп. Война — это всегда плохо. Убивать людей нельзя. Мне кажется, что платит человек, который сейчас в этом участвует, своей жизнью, своим здоровьем или еще чем-нибудь, неудобствами с разных сторон. Обычные россияне будут платить тем, что их государство будет тратить все свои деньги на всякое дерьмо типа ракет.
Я понял.
И как вы думаете, вообще реально это или нет?
Это
или
просто фотография.
Ну а друзья, может быть, знакомые какие-нибудь есть?
Выходные данные где?
Какой-то сайт там информационный, европейский.
Ну что, тут происходит какая-то хрень.
Я откажусь от комментариев, честно тебе сказать. Я думаю, что постановка по большей части.
Как вы вообще поняли, что это правда? Вот так вот вопрос.
Потому что там идет война, соответственно, там уже жилище и убивают людей.
Там может
что-то постановочное. Мне кажется. Украина делает.
по фотографиям или просто свое мнение? А почему кажется, что постановка?
Ну, сейчас уже информационная борьба идет. Я вот работаю в Вавилоне, там вот, охранник брат умер.
А он с какой страны?
Донецк.
И...
То есть им каждую неделю только воду поставляют, моются там и так далее. Ну, вот. Тяжело живется.
Ну, получается, украинцы его убили.
Ну, конечно, силовики, да.
Какая разница, фотошопленные или нет? Это все равно происходит.
Думаете, происходит все-таки?
Как может не происходить со столькими людьми? Все врут, что ли?
Будем ли мы потом платить за восстановление городов?
Это было бы честно.
Ну, а вот наши города могли бы в что-то подобное превратиться в результате?
Не исключено. Тем более, раз была Великая Отечественная, раз такое в Украине произошло, когда, казалось бы, люди научились разговаривать и разговаривать дистанционно и удаленно.
You guys think this will escalate into Russia? I mean, there's already happenings in Russia, like buildings and conscription offices, but that's likely resistance to like the Russian war. It's not like the Ukrainian military in Russia or another military in Russia. Do you think that the war will reach interior Russia like it is in Ukraine? Comment in the chat.
Но при этом мы не можем решить такие конфликты, конечно, это может произойти со всеми.
Ну, понятно, ваш стиль. И что вы хотите? Мое отношение к этому?
Не, отношения вообще, как вы думаете, реально это или нет?
Реально.
Потому что
здесь нереально?
Люди делятся просто на разные категории. Кто-то говорит, что вообще эти кадры не существуют, вот, они нереальны, и это все фейки подделывают. Кто-то говорит, что это правда, у кого-то родственники в Украине есть.
Во-первых, тут же не сказано, ну, что это за снимки в том плане, чьи бомбы.
Но вы думаете, чьи бомбы?
Мне это безразлично.
Просто все подряд летят, и в совокупности там.
Какая разница? Разрушение есть разрушение, война есть война, это есть смерть и прочее.
Не знаю, правда или нет, ну, типа, непонятно. Мы же там не были, достоверной информации как бы непонятно.
Ну вот, может быть, знакомые какие-то у вас есть, или друзья, или там какие-то просто информация случайно?
Да, есть. Вот, чувак жил в Украине, в каком-то городе, я точно не знаю, но он, в общем, сбежал в Краснодар. Вот. Ну, типа как беженец с Украины, вот, и он рассказывал, что там на самом деле украинские войска стреляют по своим же гражданам, что там нет никакой поддержки со стороны властей украинских, то есть в небольших городах, а он там из деревни из какой-то, он говорил, что он, как только началась вся эта ситуация, у них там отключили доставку, ну, поставки еды какие-то, отключили электричество, и там они сидят, там бомбежки начались, сидят люди в подвалах, то есть ни провизии, ничего нет.
Ну а ему неизвестна причина, то есть почему так все происходит, кто вообще это делает?
Причина понятна, известна, мне кажется, всем. Ну, типа...
Ну, мне неизвестно, например. Почему сами же украинские власти там бомбят своих, как бред звучит?
Я думаю, что это страх. Ну, типа, они боятся просто там, как бы в любой день они могут умереть, и кто знает, что может человек делать.
No, Keith, these are Russian state media viewers.
Находясь в таком страхе.
Not much of a difference, though, is there?
Там это похоже на взрыв бытового газа, нет?
Вот мне неизвестно.
Мне тоже. Ну, почему нет? Такие ситуации могут быть. Да, что еще?
Кто-то связывает это со спецоперацией.
Вовсе нет.
То есть, скорее всего, просто взорвались какие-то дома там.
Могут фильм снимать. Нет?
Ну, на сайте вот информационном пишут то, что это именно связано со спецоперацией. То есть они врут скорее.
Вариантов много. Как то, так и другое.
Ну а вам как кажется?
Фильм снимаю.
The Pulp Fiction ending. He thinks they're making a movie in Ukraine. Goodness. Let's go back to the video report. Anything we might have missed for the day? I suppose no.
In this Russian propaganda film, Yulia Paevska is marched.
All right, let's get the update from President Zelensky, and then I'll wrap up for the night. So Zelensky, Ukrainian forces are currently advancing in several tactical directions, in particular in the south. In the Kherson region and the Zaporizhia region, we will not give up our land. The entire foreign territory of Ukraine will be Ukrainian. This is from President Zelensky, his update for the 6th of July.
Захисниці. Сьогодні в Харкові російським ракетним ударом був зруйнований педагогічний університет, головний корпус, лекторії, університетський музей, наукова бібліотека. Це з точністю до 100% характеризує російське вторгнення. Якщо давати визначення тому, що таке варварство, цей удар підходить найбільше. Тільки ворог цивілізованості і людяності може робити такі речі, бити ракетами по університету, по педагогічному університету. Пошкоджено цим ударом і вже другий об'єкт, який присвячений Григорію Сковороді, пам'ятник, що був на площі перед університетом. Його завалило уламками, але все ж таки пам'ятник не розбитий. А от музей Сковороди, розташований на Харківщині, ще в травні згорів після російського обстрілу. Втім, перефразовуючи найвідоміші слова Сковороди, як би окупанти не намагалися нас зловити, їм нас не спіймати. Ми обов'язково вистоїмо і все відновимо. Нарешті відчувається, що дуже потужно запрацювала західна артилерія. Та зброя, яку ми отримали від наших партнерів. Її точність дійсно така, як потрібно. Наші оборонці завдають дуже відчутних ударів по складах та інших точках, які важливі для логістики окупантів. І це суттєво знижує наступальний потенціал російської армії. Втрати окупантів з кожним тижнем будуть тільки зростати, як і ускладненість їхнього постачання. Сьогодні широкому загалу стало відомо, що на півдні нашої країни в окупованих районах був закритий доступ до соціальних мереж, месенджерів і Ютубу. Російські сили заблокували будь-яку можливість людей знати правду про те, що відбувається, і про наш потенціал, який ми поступово збільшуємо.
Limit their ability to access information. I'm hoping Ukrainians in the southern axes have VPNs.
Українські сили просуваються наразі на кількох тактичних напрямках, зокрема і на півдні, на Херсонщині, в Запорізькій області. Ми не віддамо нашу землю, вся суверенна територія України буде українською. Люди мають про це знати, тому якщо у вас є можливість говорити з людьми на півдні нашої держави, з Херсоном, Геніческом, Бердянськом, Мелітополем та іншими містами і селами, поширюйте, будь ласка, там правду. Використовуйте будь-яку можливість, щоб сказати людям в окупованих районах, що ми про них пам'ятаємо і за них ми боремось. Боремось за увесь наш південь, за увесь український Донбас. Там зараз найбільш жорстоке протистояння.
And then after President Zelensky's update, also, if you guys have a comment or if you have a question for me that you would like to ask, or just like a question about the war in general that you'd like to know more about, just get your question ready and I'll be reading off those at the end.
Біля Слов'янську і Бахмуту. Боремось за Харківщину. І хай окупанти не думають, ніби їхній час на цій землі довгий, а перевага їхньої артилерії вічна. Провів засідання Ставки Верховного Головнокомандувача. Як завжди, заслухав доповіді і від військових, і від розвідки. Спільно визначили напрямки дій на найближчий час. Розширюємо зовнішньополітичні напрямки для нашої держави. Вперше в історії українсько-парагвайських відносин провів розмову з президентом Парагваю. І ми цінуємо підтримку від цієї країни і будемо і надалі посилювати зв'язки в Латинській Америці. Також сьогодні говорив з президентом Мозамбіку, привітав з обранням його держави до Ради безпеки ООН і вважає, що Африка має отримати більше представництва на міжнародних майданчиках і при вирішенні глобальних питань. Саме африканським країнам зараз чи не найбільше загрожує продовольча криза, яку спровокувала Росія. І маємо зробити все, щоб змусити державу-терориста розблокувати український аграрний експорт. Відбувся візит до Києва прем'єр-міністра Ірландії, держави, яка нам суттєво допомагає. Ірландія навіть допомагала нам переконувати представників держав-скептиків у Євросоюзі, що Україна заслуговує на кандидатство і подальше членство в ЄС. Окрім цього, пам'ятаємо, що Сенат Ірландії визнав злочини російських окупантів геноцидом українського народу. І цей крок, а також підтримка Ірландією юридичних зусиль для покарання російських воєнних злочинів – це все дуже важливо. Разом з роботою українських правоохоронців, допомога партнерів – це саме ті цеглинки, з яких і буде побудовано відновлення справедливості для України. Кожен російський вбивця, кат і гвалтівник, які прийшли на нашу землю, будуть відповідати, і неважливо, скільки часу займе виконання цього завдання. Ні для кого з окупантів не буде спокою. Я вдячний всім, хто бореться за Україну. Слава Україні!
President Zelensky providing an update in Ukraine, currently advancing in several tactical directions, in particular in the south, in the Kherson region, in the Zaporizhia region. We will not give up our land. The entire sovereign territory of Ukraine will be Ukrainian. Sounds hopeful. Sounds hopeful. I don't know about the east in the Donbass. I'm not so sure about the east right now. Ukraine can't win with what they have right now. They need more. They can win overall if they have more of what they have now, but they're not. They have onesies and twosies of the equipment that is needed. They need more of it. They can defend themselves. They just need the equipment to do so. That should be the latest. You guys have any questions? You guys have any questions for me in the chat? Comment your questions. I'll try to see them as best as I can and read off some of our questions here. If not, I'll read the latest key takeaways from the day, and then we'll finish up. Also, after the stream ends, if you guys don't have any questions, if you're interested, on our gaming channel, I do stream video games. We'll be streaming part 2, Metal Gear Solid 2 playthrough, talking about nuclear deterrence. I saw some questions, saw some nuclear deterrent comments in the chat, and this is a video game all about nuclear deterrence, and it's tactical espionage action. So it's like an action game, got a pretty amazing story to it as well. So join us for Metal Gear Solid 2 gameplay tonight after the stream is complete. If you guys don't have any questions. Okay. So key takeaways one last time for the day in Ukraine. Key takeaways. The Russian Ministry of Defense has not claimed any territorial gain since July 3rd, while supporting the assessment that Russian forces are conducting an operational pause while still engaging in limited ground attacks to set conditions for more significant offensive operations. The Kremlin continues to prepare for a protracted war by setting conditions for crypto mobilization of the economy and largely initiating an operational pause in Ukraine. There we go. Where do you realistically think the Russians will stop? Ukraine can't take it back. All right. So here we go. Some questions. Here's where I think Russia will stop. I've drawn the line. I'll draw it again. This is where I think this will end. All that will be red. Okay, just in general, let's go a bigger area. But I feel like they'll get this area. I feel like they'll get this region. Unless Ukraine can get heavy weapons and get their heavy weapon situation bolstered here and prevent the advance. But I feel that the Russians will finish off this region, okay? And then to the south, I feel Ukraine will get back Kherson. So back into Ukrainian territory, or maybe even this whole thing. Right there. This will go back into Ukrainian territory, so blue. And then up here as well. It might be hard near the border. The Russians might be able to hold the border down. Ukraine might extend out into that far, get that much back, while the Russians maintain the border. But that's about it. Ukraine will gain this territory back in the southern axes. The way that this is going, the way they're on pace. And then that's where it'll be for however long. The Russians will maintain their posture in Donbass, in here. Close that off. Make this red. This is my prediction. And then they'll have to, through some, I don't know, because none of the peace talks have worked at all. Because Russia will just say that they're committed to peace talks, and then as soon as Ukraine is leaving, or their citizens are leaving the area, Russia will hit them with artillery. So this is what I think. I think Ukraine will get this region back. They'll get more back in Kharkiv, and then Russia will take this little cauldron of cities here in the Donbass. They're already on pace for it. They're already on pace to get these two next. Bakhmut and Seversk. So they got Lysychansk in the last week. Seversk, excuse me, it's Ukrainian cities. Seversk and Bakhmut are the last two Ukrainian cities left in this little pocket here before you get to Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Druzhivka, and Kostyanivka here, right? So this is what's going to happen next in my predictions. I could be wrong. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but it's not looking like I am. Is the Russians will then take this region, right? They got Lysychansk in the next week or so. And then by the next month or so, they'll get close within here along these cities. And this is all banking on if the Ukrainians are at the level that they are now with their counteroffensives and their defensive capabilities, because it's not good enough, at least for the East. At least for the East, right? It's good enough for the southern axes and holding the Russians off because the Russians have moved all their equipment over here. And then if the Ukrainians still aren't able to get more heavy equipment and more heavy artillery to protect themselves, they're looking to likely lose this whole region here. They can't defend this region. It's all going to turn red if they can't defend this territory. But right now, Seversk and Bakhmut are next for Ukrainian cities. Ukrainian-held cities still. Seversk, Bakhmut for the Russian advance. Any other questions? People have been posting questions. It's hard to see the questions, y'all. I don't want to be like, you send super chats for questions because that's garbage, but like that's a way to get my attention. If you guys have there's super chats options for like 99 cents, but if you really have a pressing question, that's one way to get my attention, but I'm trying to make some time for that right now. So just at me too. That's another good way. Like Garrett added me, so Mercado Media shows up in orange on the chat, and that grabs my attention. So any other questions? Mercado catch up what's going on with Tez. I'll have to look up with that afterwards. Jacob Blake Sr. I don't know. I'll have to look into that after the stream. Any other questions you guys might have right now? This is question time. What's the point of joining the EU if they're not doing anything to help Ukraine hold position? So that it's all, in my opinion, the EU is an economic organization. It's not a defensive organization. So that'll help Ukraine get some more funding and some of the programs for the EU. But in terms of defense, that's NATO. The EU is an economic organization. Any other questions before we go? This is question time. If not, you can ask questions to me on Snack Squad TV during the video game stream. You can talk about anything you want and ask me questions. There's usually about 60 to 100 tuned in. We got nearly 400, so it's the comments are a little easier to see. Chief Supreme, what is a question? Ask away. You're looking for the intro song is Song of Storms. The ending song is Bunny no Senpai. Mercado Media, someone asked about deaths per day estimate. I'm not sure about deaths per day. We can go, I mean, the deaths information is, you know, each side is putting out different information. Oops. Let me go back here. The death toll is all over the place. Here's the numbers that Kyiv puts out, the Kyiv Independent. The latest. Russia's losses as of July 6th. 36,500 troops, 1,600 tanks, 3,789 APVs, 812 artillery systems, 247 multiple launch rocket systems, 107 anti-aircraft warfare. So this is per Ukraine. Is Andrew on live chat? I am. I am on Facebook and YouTube. I might not be seeing all the questions though too. That's the other thing. My entire justification. What justification? Can we outro with Baraktar? What, just for today? Okay, just for Josh will Baraktar. Any other questions, y'all, before we wrap up? Let's look that up then. Ukraine. So like Ukrainian losses, or like just in general? From 6/16. That might be outdated information. From 2 days ago, number of civilian casualties in Ukraine. Allow all. There's a nice chart. Might have to come back with you guys on that. I'll add that to what I need to include for tomorrow. I need to include the firm's report, and I need to find a solid source for daily deaths. All right, I'll have that for you tomorrow. How do you feel if how does the war change if China invades Taiwan? Well, China will be focused on. I feel that's going to happen. Personally, I feel that China and that invasion is brewing. That's in its beginning stages between China and Taiwan. Obviously, China will have less resources to help Russia in its invasion. That would definitely widen global concern. Resources would have to go to assist Taiwan from the West. I'm gonna have to look into that a little more. I'll have a better answer for you tomorrow. Let me look into that a little more. But I have seen reports, so I need to include Taiwan into our daily reports. I can do that. Can the EU filter weapons through Ukraine? Negative. EU is an economic organization. That'd be NATO. Do you think the Middle East war is waiting to happen? Be specific, Zach. What Middle Eastern war? Question above. Let me see. Andrew, what are the firm's reports? The fire system. NASA's firm's report. Fire map. This right here. Right? So we can go to Ukraine, and tomorrow I'll have this ready to go with the reports, and you can see where the fires are taking place. So you can see where some of the artillery barrages are going on within the country. Right? Here's Ukraine. Some of the fires on the east in the Donbass, right along the line. Here's up into Kharkiv. This is the border with Kharkiv and Volgograd. Some of the fires along the T2117 highway that were reported. So this is the firm system, and we've used this before, like when the war first began. Here's to the south. Here's some of the firm's data along the Inhluetz River between, here's Mykolaiv and Kherson. Some of the ongoing fighting there in the southern axes. So you can see, we can go to this firm's report in Ukraine and get an update on the fires going on from the artillery. Do I trust this map? Yes, I do. Fire information for resource management. I do trust this map. Any other questions you guys have? Iran, Israel, and Syria. I have not, I've touched on Israel news here and there, but I haven't gone in depth yet on that. Right now, in terms of global conflicts or global issues, it's pretty much just Ukraine right now until I get more experience or time with it, and then I can branch out. But I need to learn more, even more yet, even though we've been covering this for 133 days. I still need more time to learn more before I can just start covering all types of world news. I feel the funding should be even. I feel that U.S. ambassadors or those that are answering to the United States should push for a more equal assistance within Ukraine, especially that Germany and other countries, especially Germany, has increased their military spending and their military budget in response to this war. Why don't I question? It's NASA. Like, what's there to question? Why am I? So I have to. This is on the NASA website. Okay, like it's an official. It's a government website. So I don't know what there is to question. There isn't like a source above this. You know what I mean? Like this is firms. This is what's referenced when I'm reading the reports. The mainstream news pulls from this. I'm losing your comments. If you don't have a valid critique of the source, then you're not valid. Come up with a valid critique or move on. Just saying that it's not, the source isn't valid isn't good. Any other questions? Posted a link to a site with real-time air pollution worldwide. Did you post that in the Discord? Post that. Is that in the readable links in Discord? Post that into the war discussion channel. Okay, well. Okay, well, Serena, I don't have a YouTube video for you. Okay, we go through plenty of YouTube videos, and I'm sorry I don't have a fire data YouTube video for you with flashy colors and shit that looks like it was made on the old Microsoft programs. Any other questions? Question, how am I feeling today? Personal questions. I'm doing okay. I think that's going to wrap it up though, y'all. That's it for questions for the day. All right, we're going to wrap up. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. I'm Andy Mercado from Mercado Media, U.S. Army veteran, independent journalist. If you guys have any questions while I'm live, again, one of those options. I mean, you can send super chats if you want and keep it. That's optional though. Don't feel obligated. Consider becoming a member of the channel. The link is in the description of the video, and it's also in the comments in the chat. Join us for entertainment after the stream on Snack Squad TV. I will redirect you right into that live stream if you hang out on Mercado Media when this ends. I'll send you right into it, okay? You guys are an amazing audience. Thank you to everybody on YouTube that tunes in. Thank you to everybody on Facebook that tunes in on a daily basis. Thank you guys again. Have a wonderful night. Hit that reaction button, follow the page, all of the things. Until tomorrow, you guys have a wonderful evening and take care.